Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Legend of One on PokerStars.
I'm your other host, East Coast Sam on Poker Stars. Welcome to our coverage of the Doubles Championship, which was an event that aired back in 2010. Just one season, 13 episodes in total. And we're also going to be talking about another series, Super High Roller Club, which was sort of a PokerGo original. They kind of just did apropos of nothing. They just posted it onto the website. We talked about both of them today. Pretty excited for this one.
Yeah, I always enjoy taking a dip into the PokerGo archives because we've talked so much about the world of the poker branded content. And so it's fun to kind of see what else is untapped for new PokerGo subscribers. Now, both of these contents are on PokerGo, but are kind of opposites in that one was sort of acquired from the archive of GSN, the game show network, which is where the Doubles Poker Championship originally aired, whereas the High Roller Club, it's a PokerGo exclusive. So kind of like Face the Ace, it was just sort of they were trying to buy up any old content that they could from another network to put it on their channel, just to sort of mix things up. And so I had personally never heard of this championship prior to sort of scanning the archives of PokerGo, and I was kind of excited. I mean, I'm a twin, so a tag team of two is kind of a fun idea. And beginning in episode one, we get an idea of what the structure is. And so it's kind of a hybrid between like Poker Superstars Invitational and that you have multiple heats and you're earning points and there's playoffs and there's multiple phases of the tournament of the game. And so I was pretty excited to take a peek at this. And this is 32 players, so a pretty good roster of players. I mean, I think Superstars only had like 24-ish players. So I always say having more players in there is always fun. And we have a mixture of some of the best players at the time in the 2000s. This is the late 2000s, early 2010s, but still kind of the as far as the field, I was very excited. And I this was a 13 episode season, and so we were discussing what we were going to review for the podcast, and we were both very excited to check this out. And things didn't quite go quite as we planned.
Yeah, I mean, just to go over the format so we're all clear. So 50K is the starting stack. Blinds start at 500 to 1K. Now, here's where the doubles feature comes in. Players switch off every street. So pre-flop, post-flop, post-turn, and then on the river. Um, which is, we're used to seeing tag team events in which the players will switch off. They can switch off between hands, but they can't confer with somebody in the middle of a hand. Um, a lot of players in the tag team event, I think the general consensus for teams is that they wait until the end of each level to switch off, so that each player has about 2 hours to play or an hour to play, whatever exactly the levels are. And also they're allowed a 1 30-second timeout. So in the middle of a hand, one of the players could say timeout, go and speak to their partner, they go off to the side and they confer with each other. But we see throughout that players are talking to each other when after they fold cards, they'll kind of whisper to each other about what to do, sort of different strategies. It's 4 teams per match, so 8 players at the table in total, because poker tables traditionally 9 people. And then each episode has 2 matches to accommodate everybody who's there. I have 4 thoughts that I kind of want to offer about this format and about what we saw. What, why, how, and what again? This was very strange. I mean, we'll get into the nitty-gritty here, but I mean, just going over everything I just said, switching off on every street, only having 50 big blinds to start, having this 30-second timeout, and also the players just seemed very confused at the table too. Across the episodes that we watched, they really, I'm sure they were briefed on the rules before they went out and filmed this, but it was just like they didn't seem to know like when to pass cards, how to use their timeout. Like the funniest part of this was just the players like making jokes about the format. Like one player would say, I'm all in, and another, his teammate would say, I'm all in too. Like just kind of like meta humor about this, because this is just so confusing to me.
Yeah, each player paid $50,000 to buy in, and the top prize for first place was $1 million. So that's pretty cool. But
Mhm.
and then the pay structure trickles down to if you want to match along the way, if you got second, third, fourth, etc. And it was basically you'd play 4 matches to accumulate points. They were assigned a teammate at the very beginning, and that's their teammate for the entirety of the first phase of this game. And so fourth place in a match gets you 0 points. Third place gets you 4 points. Second place 11 points. First place 20 points. With I guess the consensus being that the composite average score for a team I think would be like 35 points would be sort of like kind of your to get into the next round would be kind of a safe bet, because only the top 16 players of the 32 would make it into the next round, and then the top two teams in the playoffs go on to the semifinal. It's just, and so on and so forth. Only one player's left, and I was a little surprised myself as well that the players didn't quite. I mean, they weren't given their teammate until like right before the first match, so I guess they couldn't plan with each other person. But at least they're usually people are given the rules and whatnot before they begin a program like this. So it's not. I mean, some shows keep you in the dark intentionally. I don't think this was that kind of show at all. And so David Tuckman and Brandon Adams are commentating in the booth with Lacey Jones on the floor, and it's kind of funny. Brandon Adams is kind of in both halves of this review duo that we're doing today. And so I was reasonably excited because I wasn't quite sure. I thought maybe it'd be funny to see within a team of two, one player wants to bluff, one player doesn't want to bluff, and maybe there'd be some sort of like tug of war of my approach would have worked. Why didn't you do that? And I know you obviously made your little 4-point thing, but my biggest problem is that because they're so shallow after level 2, level 3, if they go all in pre-flop, the doubles format is literally useless. If I go all in, obviously we're not having another street, therefore it's just a generic shove fest by the the back half of these matches. So we're not told the blind levels. It's probably like 15, 20 minutes probably. It seems pretty quick. And because the pacing is so fast, we do get two these mini matches in one episode, which I was surprised by. I didn't see that coming. I guess it kind of makes sense given how many each team plays 4 matches and you can't squeeze into 13 episodes so many matches if you only have one per episode. But at the same time, because we only get probably like 18 minutes maybe for one match, and that includes 3 bust out hands. Again, these tables don't really have time to develop a dynamic. It becomes kind of a shove fest. It's not quite as bad as Poker Superstars Invitational. It's maybe like one notch better. But I still think that the barometer for a good point structure league system is from the Poker Premier League, where they have many big blinds for the first 5, 6 levels really, and then things can become a show fest by that point. But and because we're playing 4-handed, I mean the hand quality is pretty crappy. I mean you've got like 9-7s up against like Queen 9. I mean it's just nothing all that not enough time for any true poker to really develop. And because we have the teammates can't talk during a hand outside of the timeout. And so we don't really get too much personality within a team. Now, the players do talk to each other at the table from the 4 teams, but there's not too much personality at work here at the table.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. My biggest problem was just how fast-paced this whole thing was. I mean, just for match 1, I mean, we only had what, like a dozen hands or so. I mean, it
Not
went
even.
very,
Not
yeah,
even.
not even. Very fast. 4-handed action. I guess you could say 4-handed or 8-handed action, however you want to call it. Did take up the longest chunk of time. But then after that, I mean, 3-handed action was very quick. Was I don't think only one hand, and then 2-handed heads up was only a couple hands. So I mean, it was just way too fast, and the hands themselves weren't super interesting. A lot of just kind of cards playing themselves. One pair versus another pair, a flush, draw, calling, only to miss. So they just shut down. The stacks are just too shallow. As I mentioned, the players just seem very just kind of thrown off by the rules. Obviously it's a new format. A little bit of that's going to, there's going to be some sea legs at first, but they like just didn't seem to know like when to pass each other their cards. They were even asking the dealer, like, do I pass the cards now?
Mhm.
Joking about using timeouts and stuff. I mean, just very strange. I mean, it's really hard to talk about because it's just unlike any other format I've ever seen. I mean, the tag team event is the closest analog there is, and even then, as I mentioned, there are so many differences between the tag team and what we have here. So it's really no wonder this is only one season. This was never done again.
And not to mention, I'm not really sure how well poker shows on GSN really ever did. I think there was like that Celebrity Poker Showdown was a show on
Yep.
maybe on GSN. I'm not sure if that was on NBC or something else, but yeah, I don't know. Also, there's really very few, if any, interviews intermixed in the action. Maybe someone gets a mini bust interview. Maybe episode 2 did have a proper interview mid episode. Episode 1 didn't really do that.
Hmm.
And then there's the stack sizes are only shown once ever in episode 1, for example, and which is a shame because again, even if Tuckman doesn't say like, oh, the stack sizes are here, just show it every now and then, give us an idea of how the table is navigating as the action continues here. Again, I like the cast. I like a lot of the players that they had. I don't think that this was a prime showcase for any of their talents because of how really it was pretty ABC poker on display here, and that's just really let them given the quality of the cast.
Yeah, I mean, we had pretty much everybody who was somebody in the poker world was here, except for Doyle Brunson, I think. But they had quite a wide range of players here. They had Phil Ivey, they had Mike Matisow, they had Annette Oberstad, Tony G. Everybody here. Um, yeah, I mean, really, again, in terms of poker strategy, there's really not that much to talk about. As you mentioned, there was a lot of shoving pre-flop, um, which again ruins the format, as you mentioned. But again, the pacing is just way too fast for you to have any sense of like, did they were able to build reads on each other? Were the teams able to build a rapport with each other? Did they have time beforehand to strategize? I don't even really know. I mean, match two, I mean, just going count here, it's one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 hands, which is just way too short and
Three
just
of them are bust
ridiculous.
out hands too, so
Yeah,
really that's only
bust out
four
hands.
non-bust out hands to set the. And also, the commentary is just kind of your standard, David Tuckman in the booth. There's no like attempts at comedy or any super deep analysis because this is really not a format that lends itself well to deep analysis anyway. I mean, you have, I guess, the points ICM sort of like, I don't want to bust out in third, I want to get second, but at the same time, you do have four matches, and so it's not the end of the world if you only get, a few points in one match. You have time to make up for it. And I just didn't vibe with this format. I was really hoping that I'd at least buy into the concept of this championship so that I could, enjoy, 13 episodes of this. These are, 43-minute episodes. So, it would be in a 1 hour time block on TV. And even at 2x speed, I just found myself really, really let down at watching this. And so I did feel that episode two was marginally better than episode one. Luckily, by the end of episode two, we got to see all 32 players because they, give us one match with each team. And I guess the only thoughts I really thought about Sam was I was just curious if of the cast here, who would you have picked to be your partner in this tournament?
I guess Phil Ivey, just because he's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, it's just hard to know. I mean, they kind of try to talk a little bit like, would you rather have a partner who complements you and complements your skill set, or do you want to have somebody who has, brings different skills to the table? If you're a math guy, do you want to have somebody who's more of a fields and live read guy, or vice versa? And again, we don't really know like what their individual styles are. We don't really know what their rapport is because the pacing is just so fast.
not to mention, I mean, even if you have opposing styles, I don't think that alternating your cards in a hand really allows you to play either game especially well, especially when again it's just four-handed play, and we're seeing there's junk hand, and there's maybe like one passable starting hand in the edit. It's not like we were getting these crazy like jacks against queens or ace king against two tens all in pre-flop. We just got a lot of these sort of raggy hands, and I don't feel that this is kind of a hyper turbo-ish structure, and you're only playing half the hand if that. So I didn't learn anything from watching these players play. And I usually try to find something, one or two tricks here and there whenever I watch these guys play.
Yeah, I mean, there's ace queen sometimes, there's pocket fives, hands that are okay. But yeah, I mean, just nothing that's that special in terms of poker strategy. I mean, this is 2010, so obviously the strategy wasn't as advanced as it is now today, but a little bit of something would be nice.
Yeah, I just wasn't impressed by the poker on display. And maybe the only small little thing that I kind of enjoyed was seeing how people use their timeouts. Sometimes they would discuss, okay, I'm not going to bluff, I'll just check and lose the hand. Sometimes they would, no one really tries, no one really weaponizes their timeouts in a sense of like trying to make a bluff or a value bet seem stronger or weaker. It's just more of a double checking their thought process with their teammate. And again, I could see potentially that being a tool in the poker player's arsenal going forward. But obviously, I think in your first match, and you only have one timeout. Like if you had two or three, I think that would probably have made the timeout actually feel like it mattered. Because if only one, it's just and you're just like, oh, I might go all in with king queen. Are you okay with this? Okay, and then they lose to like ace queen. Like this is it's a trite thing to do at that point.
Yeah, I mean, 30 seconds also, I just don't think is enough time to really go over strategy. It's, hey, are you cool if I go all in here? Okay. There's not enough time to, okay, hey, I have this read on this player. I think you should be doing this instead. Nothing like that. Or, walk me through the hand, walk me through your thought process thus far. 30 seconds doesn't give you enough time to do that. Or build suspense too. I mean, like a 1 minute timeout would like build suspense a little bit, and you can cut to the other team who's like waiting for the team to come back and, get looks on their faces as they're reacting to this or something. I don't know. It's just, yeah, just again, way too fast.
And so, originally our intention was to watch this entire program, but I watched episode 1 of Sam. I said, Sam, why don't we not watch this whole thing? And Sam agreed. We both had to not enjoy episode 1, and I figured we'd watch episode 2 just so that we could see each member of the cast at least once, that we knew the 32 players at work. I think that was a good idea, but ultimately, it's just, again, I would say it's just just a big swing and a miss. Whereas I think with Face the Ace, which was just kind of boring and misguided, this one was just flawed due to the nature of the shallow stacks to begin with, and the fact that if you go all in pre-flop, the structure means nothing at all.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a bit of back on Poker Stars when they used to have that like mode where you could get rid of people's cards, or like little powers or whatever. You could do things, and then after a while, it just stops becoming about poker because you rely so heavily on this stuff. It just feels gimmicky, and that's what I feel about this. Like in one word, it's just gimmicky. It's just a weird premise. I don't mind the tag team event at WSOP. I think that's cool. I'd be curious to see, some sort of slightly tweaked format for something like this, a poker TV show. But this particular format just does not work at all. So, I mean, Face the Ace is just really bad. This is kind of interesting to see for the absurdity of it. Face the Ace was, I guess, kind of so bad it's good in certain ways. This, like, I don't plan on watching again.
I mean, at least with Face the Ace, episode 1 had that amazing cliffhanger of he's going to go for the $1 million match. That was kind of a cool cliffhanger. This
Yeah.
one didn't have any like one highlight that I could draw from saying I generally enjoyed this moment. It was just, again, it was just boring, and I can see why PokerGo probably got it cheap and put it into their archives, and so it gets a thumbs down for me. But obviously, if you know any of these players, if you're a diehard poker viewer and you don't care, maybe watch it. Maybe watch episode 1 and see what we're talking about. Otherwise, I would say pass.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe worth seeing just to see for the absurdity of it and just, kind of this weird anomaly that was in poker television for, one season. I mean, they made 13 episodes, so I mean, they invested they built a set for it. They hired camera people. I never heard of Lacey, whatever her name is. So they're like, they put resources into this. They probably thought that this was going to be a hit, and it wasn't. So
Although again, this also kind of comes at the tail end of sort of the second golden era of poker. So sponsorships changing after Black Friday. So it's very possible that a season 2 could have existed had that not happened, but I would say probably not in that case. So since we had not finished the entire season, I felt that it'd be nice to find something else on PokerGo to check out. We know we've watched a few things here and there, but we haven't there's still a lot we haven't touched. So I found this thing called the Super High Roller Club. And it was, again, kind of another one of those sort of anthology short video things. Nothing that I would say subscribe to PokerGo to watch, but just if you're bored, check it out. It's sort of these 7 to 11 minute videos with Ali Najad meeting with some of the top poker players and sort of getting involved in some sort of living the high life, or or in this case he kind of splits each episode into 2 halves. One is sort of a interview about what got you into poker, what's your passions, and then one is some activity or something that is a part of their personal life. And so to start off with, we have, again, Brandon Adams, who I mentioned before was one of the commentators of David Tuckman and Doubles Championship. And so it's kind of funny to have him lead in. And I actually thought that this first one was probably my favorite of the 6. And it's sort of Ali Najad joining Brandon into the tennis world that Brandon is a fan of. And the major element of this video is a bet that Brandon makes with a professional tennis player. If you can win one game out of a multi-set match, he wins $10,000, and he puts 2.4 to 1 odds on it. And I thought it was a pretty engaging bet to watch.
yeah, I mean, it's only a couple minutes, so I mean, you kind of summarized it. Brandon Adams talks a little bit about why he likes to play tennis, and tennis is different than poker because tennis is very physical. And then most of the episode is just this, little tennis match. And yeah, this whole series is just kind of like nice little, mini episodes. It's kind of what they used to do on ESPN when they'd have little blurbs about the players. Like I remember in 2013, at the final table, they had little blurbs of like Mark Ante and McLaughlin playing, what was it, trampoline
Dodgeball.
dodgeball or something,
Yeah.
and JC Tran playing basketball. Like these nice, cute little segments where it's the players outside of poker, and you get to learn a little bit more about their personalities. And I really like stuff like that. Like this could be stuff that they could put into the actual WSOP broadcast, and I'd be happy with it. Kind, like a little bit like the nuts, like just a nice little sort of palate cleanser. Yeah, and this was a fun episode to watch, because Brendan almost pulls it off in the
At the
last,
very end too.
but the very end, unfortunately comes up short. And there's just kind of like a nice lighthearted atmosphere here. This is nothing more than what it is. It's just sort of a nice little puff piece. And I like all 6 episodes totally fine. But yeah, this one was fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I have a sort of a low key interest in tennis from various different elements, and so it's fun to watch. And Brandon, he's not doesn't compare to this Steve Bass, who he plays, but he does hold his own pretty well. I mean, he's returning a lot of these volleys, and he's not double faulting. He's holding his own as an amateur, semi-amateur, whatever you want to call it, player can do. And so, I was surprised. I was impressed. I don't know how old Brandon Adams was in this filming, but I think he looks a little bit older than the actual pro. So props to him for not embarrassing himself, even though he lost six love, 6 love.
Yeah.
And then he's also just a very nice guy. We learned a bit about him also in the '05 Tournament of Champions, as he made the final table there. So again, it's kind of funny. He's kind of been kind of a pretty regular player in our content reviews recently, so it's kind of funny. Episode 2, I thought was a bit of a step down from episode 1. Was this Nick Schulman on display talking about billiards, and I think Nick Schulman's very charismatic. He's got a great charm. His chemistry with Ali Najad is great as always. I just didn't feel that because there wasn't really a bet or some sort of stakes to this segment that it was less exciting than the last one.
Well, there is a little bit of a bet at the end where Ali has to make this shot where he like
Yeah.
has to hit the white ball at this like holding the cue at this impossible angle like this,
Yeah.
which unfortunately he's not able to pull off. But yeah, like Nick Schulman's a totally cool guy. I love him as a commentator. We learn a little bit more about his life, that he used to play pool, and again, just sort of puff pieces where they kind of talk a little bit about whatever side activity is the feature of the episode, and then a little bit about themselves and about poker. Even though, there is the Nick Schulman drinking game, which I invented, which is take a shot every time Nick Schulman during a commentary says, right, you are Ali, he's out of there, or good game, sir. You will need to call an ambulance within an hour. Love Nick Schulman as a commentator, but I always think of that little drinking game I've invented every time I see him. So
Yeah. And then so again, I thought it was fine. It's just not quite as exciting as at least Brandon Adams had that tennis action going on. Episode 3 is Farah Galfond, the wife of Phil Galfond. And she has pivoted. She was a major prominence in Days of Our Lives, the soap opera, and she transitioned to poker. And I thought that it was kind of a weird split, and we went from Ali talking to Farah about how she met Phil Galfond, how she got into high stakes cash games, and then all of a sudden they just decided to go into downtown Vegas and try some random food. I don't know. I just even though it was meant to be spotlighting some high roller, lifestyle thing, I thought that the focus didn't quite work for me as well as the last two did.
yep, absolutely. I mean, she mentions that there was some cocktail she wanted to try, and then Ali's like, "Oh, let's go to this bar," and then they don't make that cocktail; they make something else. Like it would be if they made that cocktail, then that would be okay, but they did something else. Yeah, still fine. I mean, I don't have a problem. I don't know of the 6 people featured in this series. I know Farah Galfon the least. I've obviously seen her around and I've heard her name, but I just didn't know much about it. I didn't actually know she was a soap actress, actually. So it's kind of interesting to hear that. She seems like a totally nice person. It was interesting to hear her thoughts on, being a woman at the table if she does she encounter bad people? And then she said that it comes down to how comfortable the men are with themselves. The ones who are secure in themselves don't have a problem. The ones that are insecure about themselves do. I also like the story she told about playing her sort of first high stakes cash game, that she got pulled out of her 5-10 game and she gets aces on her first hand. I thought that was kind of nice. Yeah, seems like a totally nice person. And, I'm curious to see more from her in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was relatively prominent at the featured table in the main event a couple of years ago. I think it was like 2022, I think, yeah, I think 2022. She was on like day 5 of the TV table, and she made it pretty far. So she obviously has some poker chops there, and from what I've seen personally, and it's kind of fun to see again another one of those sort of poker power couples. We have the Foxens, the Galfons, and so that so goes on and so forth. Episode 4 is my boy Phil Hellmuth. And it's again, I love Phil Hellmuth, so I think I have a bias towards this episode, even if I thought that the last Sunglasses was kind of lame. But he makes his grand entrance to Ali at Central Park via horse-drawn carriage, which is just pretty boss. And then Hellmuth gets in a little bit to his early childhood, having ADHD, playing games at home, Monopoly, board games, card games, and then sort of his poker origins, playing as professor games, playing with people that are double, triple his age, and then going to Vegas. And I liked all that stuff. That was really fun to listen to. And then he also talks about sort of the balance between his poker persona and who he is as a person, and trying to and finding the difference between that and sort of understanding who you were coming across as to the public. And so I liked all of that interview's talk. And then I didn't care as much for the sunglasses with gold in them a bit at the very end.
Yeah, my favorite moment probably in this whole series was him talking about, him having to pursue his persona of the poker brat, and how he spoke to a guru and he said, there's you as a person and there's you as a celebrity, and you kind of need to merge them together and work things through. I thought that was really interesting because I think I've talked about this before, that Phil Hellmuth almost has like an Andy Kaufman thing going on where it's hard to tell if, how much of it is performative, how much of it isn't. So it's kind of nice to kind of slip underneath the mask there for a second and kind of see that, it's kind of a persona, but kind of isn't. And yeah, the glasses thing was a little anticlimactic. Would have been nice if there was something a little bit more substantial there. But it's just kind of nice that, again, Phil gets so much shit thrown his way. And it's nice that he just kind of has a moment where he can just, unwind and do something a little bit goofy and be a positive center of attention instead of just the poker brat.
Yeah. And then going on to episode 5 here, we have Antonio Esfandiari. Again, another one of my favorite players of all time. He talks about sort of his the Iranian connection between Ali Najad and his dad from way back. And then he talks about being a magician first, then pivoting to poker, that first big win he had. And then goes into wine tasting. And at least of wine tasting, that was, I think, a little bit more interesting than the last couple of sort of high roller life stuff, because at least they had Esfandiari do some blind taste test guessing. That was kind of cool. And it felt like, the name is Super High Roller Club. And so this sort of embodies, I think, the club motif, probably the best out of all these episodes. And so I like that. And again, Esfandiari is a very charismatic guy. He's not really in poker as much now as he was even just 5 years ago. But again, I always like seeing him whenever I see him in content.
Yeah, Esfandiari is always great. He's asking the person who's bringing them the wine, if he has a future as a sommelier, and like giving him fist bumps and all that. And they're going through, how to smell wines, and you have to like use the top of your nose and the bottom of your nose. I don't really know how it works. Yeah, always nice to see him. You basically summarized it.
Yeah, and then with Negreanu, I'll let you take the recap on this one for you. I've been hogging the spotlight here.
Yeah, it's all good. So Negreanu is the last episode, and it's about him and hockey. There's less conversation about poker, at least at the outset in this episode. It's more sort of about him starting some sort of hockey. Was it a professional hockey team
I
in
guess.
Vegas? I don't know anything about hockey, so I have no idea. And he does talk a little bit about poker, how he has to, basically keep working hard, that he got burned out in '04 when he was pretty much on top of the world in poker. And then when the game passed him, his burnout kind of faded and he got back into it. This episode was filmed around the time that the Germans were the big, sort of guys at the moment. I'm not sure when this was filmed exactly,
Right.
but it's talking a lot about, Fedor Holtz and that sort of team of Germans who had a sounding board with each other. And now Negreanu sort of had to build his own soundboard again after having a previous one with Phil Ivey and Alan Cunningham and all those folks. And then this sort of returning to the bet motif is that he gets to be a goalie, and there's a professional hockey player, a former professional hockey player, who every time gets a shot on goal, Ali will give $100 to charity, or PokerGo will give $100 to charity, which I thought was a nice thing. And the guy winds up getting 15 shots in. And they also talk a little bit like Daniel's suited up from top to bottom, and like these hockey pucks are flying so fast. Like I'd be so nervous. I mean, even with that padding, you're getting hit hard, so you got to get bruises and stuff. But God bless Daniel for doing that.
Yeah, and the guy that did say he's going maybe like 80% of real because he doesn't want to hurt Negreanu, but he's a pro, so he doesn't need to, he can go easy and still, do his job here. And then Ali takes a few shots and goes 0 for 4, so at least we have some redemption for Negreanu as goalie. And I guess I never really thought about how much exercise a goalie gets, but I guess you are moving a lot. You have to, you're never not moving when you're a goalie, even if the movements aren't super long or super, expansive with your muscle range. So I guess it would be pretty exhausting being a goalie for sure. And Negron's a good sport about it, even though he, he did block at least all these shots there. And so again, 6 episodes, if you combine their length, you're maybe talking maybe like 50-ish minutes, 45 minutes. Obviously, I watched at double speed, so cut that in half. And again, these are sort of the harmless videos, even though a couple of them maybe were a little bit less engaging for me than other ones. I still was happy to watch. And again, anytime you can learn more about these players, it's always kind of fun to do because even with all the money and the bracelets and everything, these guys have a human side too, and so it's good to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beyond that, the couple other poker news related things going on is there's a big story, but Negreanu starting another podcast, a non-poker podcast, which is kind of funny. It feels like he's following our lead here. He heard our podcast name and now he's doing a podcast. So maybe we get a little credit there, huh? And then there's also coming out, I believe in a few days on PokerGo is High Stakes Duel 5. We have Jared Blesnick against Patrick Antonius, and with a pretty substantial change in the format in that they're mixing both PLO and No Limit Hold'em. So it's not quite sure if it means like each match is a different game or within each level is the other game or something like that, because a lot of tournaments do that sometimes. But I've definitely got to give the edge, at least for now, to Blesnick because his PLO game is so strong, and as strong as Antonius might be at Hold'em, I think Blesnick's good enough that the edge won't be so substantial that he shouldn't be the favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Blesnick's PLO game, but yeah, I mean, I imagine that's an interesting format to switch off between PLO and Hold'em. And Antonius would probably only agree to do that if he had some pretty good PLO skills. So I'd be curious to see how that high stakes duel happens. That's on November 12th. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, I feel like High Stakes Duel hasn't quite ever regained the momentum from the Helmuth era. I feel like the High Stakes 4 kind of just didn't really pan out right. And you had the undercard, but it just never really amounted to something substantial. It might just be the novelty of it being Helmuth versus the World was so strong. It's hard to live up to some sort of sequel there. But I'll give High Stakes Duel 5 its own fair shake, and we'll see if it works or not. And obviously, I do applaud though their willingness to change up the format, at least in that respect too.
Yep.
Beyond that, guys, that's a relatively short itinerary here for this episode. Again, we're still waiting on that Medicine documentary to come out. I still don't know when it will. We'll find some way to watch it, and no doubt you'll be hearing our thoughts here. So I really do love documentaries, and especially all the bizarre poker talks that we've watched so far. I'm very curious to see how it compares up.
Yeah, I mean, I just typed in Matisow documentary, and the latest news was from May of 2024. Looks like there was a screening of it. The premiere happened in South Point. I'm looking at a photo of Matisow in a tux or something. Okay, so I mean, it's had its premiere, so hopefully it'll be screened. I mean, obviously a documentary is fairly low budget, so maybe PokerGo can get their hands on it, or maybe they'll just be some modest screenings at different film theaters around the country. We'll see. I don't know. But I'm curious to see how that documentary turns out.
And if you guys have heard anything, our listeners here from Matisow's podcast or news, but when we can expect or how we can watch it, let us know in the comments. We'll give you a shout out for that because I really want to watch it though. And there's always that small chance that I am somehow in it, so there's always that bonus to it too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you'll get a special thanks credit, or maybe he'll. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And otherwise, I know we had a great talk with Larry about the film Deal. I will always search out more poker films to watch. So I really do love reviewing movies, and that was a lot of fun last time too. So if you guys know any poker film that you want us to watch, let us know in the comments as well, and we'll give them a look we'll find them DVD, online, illegally streaming, whatever. We'll check it out and give you our thoughts on like I always do.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to review movies that aren't necessarily poker centric, like we've reviewed scenes from Breaking Bad and different television shows. They're just poker scenes. But just let us know if there are any out there because we've kind of done all of them pretty much.
I mean,
Except
maybe.
for,
I think there's probably like this, like Cincinnati Kid or something like that, or a few other old
there's
films.
The Sting, which has a poker scene in it. I love The Sting. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
There's Robin Amber Against the Odds, which it's got to be out there somewhere, right? I mean, we'll find it.
Yeah, we'll find it. And anyway, guys, I think that about wraps things up here. We'll see you next time. Enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, and enjoy your poker on TV.
Take care, everyone.